Last Epoch, I think, is an amazing game. So we're gonna go over my thoughts. So I'm gonna talk about the launch and the things that happened during the launch, and then just overall things here and there. So the launch. Launch was messy for sure, and we'll cover more of that later in the video. But if you did offline, that was the way to go. Because I did offline, so I was able to enjoy the game. Now, going through the campaign, it was good. Going through it the first time, the two bosses that really got my heart pumping was Lagoon and Majaza. All the other bosses were jokes. So going through the campaign the first time on launch, because I have played Last Epoch before, it felt good. It felt refreshing, right? I felt excited doing a new character, which I chose a Warlock, and having no resources. So I got that feeling of, oh man, I really need to get, my build put together before I start firing Lagoon and Majaza. I imagine as a new player, you might have died a few times at the beginning to the earlier bosses. But I think once you started getting the hang of the game, you probably realize, oh, these bosses are a joke. The real, noob stompers are Lagoon and Majaza. And that's what I think the campaign does well, where it has two bosses that you are scared to fighting, or at least you get excited about fighting because you don't know if you're able to beat them or not. The other bosses feel like a joke. The campaign overall, I really don't care for. There's nothing memorable about the campaign. The story, I didn't read the story, so I don't know if it has a good story. But overall, I feel like the campaign is laughable until you get to the last two bosses. Now, gameplay wise, the game feels amazing. The minute you start using any skill, you're like, whoa, this feels good. And that's what's important. That the skills feel great and the skills themselves are so in depth. And certain skills obviously are going to be stronger early game versus later in the game. But every skill, if I'm not wrong, you could pretty much make a build for it. It just, at that point, it's just how strong would that build be with that particular skill? Obviously, I would never know that because I'm not going to be playing every single skill in the game and trying to maximize every skill. But the fact that it's there and you could experiment and just hypothesize, oh, I want to play this kind of build and then do it is dope. Like if you found a skill that you liked and you're playing it, you could probably make it a build. And depending on how much you invest in it and how much research you do, you could probably make it work. Maybe it could do all the content. Maybe it could do only corruption to 300. But the fact that you can do it and can think about it is what makes Last Epoch gameplay so satisfying. Not just also the visuals of the skills and how the skills feel, but that mystery of, oh, how far can I take this build? And I feel like that separates Last Epoch from at least the Diablo 4, because PoE you could kind of do the same. PoE at a certain point, I do believe it gets repetitive on the defensive side of things, but on the skills and crazy builds you can make, that it's like unlimited. It's all about your imagination, your creativity. Now, from here, we're going to talk about crafting. Crafting in Last Epoch is amazing. It's the best crafting for introducing new players to the action RPG genre. I think it's complex enough to keep you engaged and fun enough to also keep you engaged because there's a gambling aspect with the crafting. And if you play Last Epoch, you know exactly what I'm talking about. For those that haven't, a quick example. So let's say you wanted to, get a certain prefix on your gear. You have on the item is always random, but items have fortune potential. And what that means is every time you try to forge a certain prefix on your gear or suffixes, any affixes, there's a chance for you to lose fortune potential. And sometimes you could upgrade your gear once and you lose all fortune potential. Boom, right there you get that, that that knot in your stomach, like, damn, that sucks. But then there's times where you could upgrade a piece of gear and you lose no fortune potential. And there, your dopamine starts hitting you and your adrenaline starts pumping. You're like, oh my, is this going to be this? How far can this gear go? You just start having this crazy, like, is this the gear? And then sometimes it is. And bam, you just upgraded your character from being basic to almost now, oh, we're a real threat now. And that's what's beautiful about the crafting in Last Epoch is that it has that ups and downs, and it's really high ups and really low downs. And that's perfect though, because I feel like it keeps the crafting fresh, even though it's not too complicated. It's kind of complex. It's kind of bare bones, I mean, in that sense. But I think it in a positive way, not in a negative way. Like PoE crafting, if you ever play PoE or you ever heard anyone talk about PoE crafting, it feels like you need a PhD. It feels like I need to go to college for PoE to just understand the crafting to where I'm making the right decisions. And that's another topic that we could talk about with Last Epoch. You are not punished for experimenting. In PoE, you kind of are in a sense. If you choose a build and it doesn't go well, it's very hard for you to keep that character and restart. You kind of have to just erase that character and make a brand new character, which I could relate to a lot of people not having enough time to do that, right? Because everyone's lives is busy, so that kind of sucks. So that's why for PoE, I feel like you gotta be a very determined player to want to get good at PoE. But with Last Epoch, you could just be someone that plays 1 or 2 hours, and after time, if you invest on 1 or 2 hours a day or 1 or 2 hours 3 days or whatever, over time you're gonna get better, and then you're gonna start opening up the game. The game's gonna become more funner for you because it doesn't take a lot to understand it, and you're not punished for having a character and experimenting. You can stay with that same character and just reset things. You can reset your skills for pretty much nothing in terms of gold. And you could always find new gear, and you're getting tons of shards which are used to upgrade your gear. So like there's no real setback in trying different things. Matter of fact, the warlock you see, I switched, her skills like at least 6 7 times. I was trying multiple different combinations until I found a combination that I really enjoyed in terms of the playstyle. So with that, I think Last Epoch far exceeds PoE in that nature, where it is for beginner friendly, and also if you're a veteran, it just keeps you engaged. Now, from the crafting, I want to talk about a little bit of Last Epoch's launch and where I think they did well and where they did poorly. So where they did well was getting everyone hyped up for the new patch, which was 1.0, which is aka their release of their game, right? It's not early access no more. Now this is the full release. The trailers were dope. Introduced to the 2 new classes, super smart, showing updates to the visuals and the user interface, really dope. And then also talking about the 2 factions, the Circle of Fortune and the Merchant Guild. Great. Got all this buzz. People are a little bit, unhappy with Diablo 4. People are wrapping up PoE. Now Last Epoch, something new, something fresh. You could sink your teeth in if you're a really big action RPG fan. Nice. Great marketing in that aspect. Where they failed was their servers and the Merchant Guild. Now, I'm not saying the Merchant Guild doesn't work. It does work. There's no wrong with the faction. The trouble is, to play Merchant Guild, you need the game servers to work properly, in the sense you can't have long loading screens. You can't have disconnects. You can't have it to where it's not smooth, because players weren't able to trade or even do the servers for a long time. It was like hours and hours. I didn't experience this. This is stuff that I've seen others players experience, and it felt like for them it was forever. I do believe at launch, like, it was several hours before you could actually enjoy the game. Everyone kept getting stuck because there were so many players trying to play Last Epoch that they weren't ready for it, and that's their fault. Now you could say, "Oh, you're being a little bit harsh." Come on, they knew if they're paying attention to competitors, which they are because they're in the same genre. They knew that they were going to get a healthy player base, at least bigger than what they already had. I guess they would have 200,000 playing, and on Twitch it showed, viewers. Now you could say, oh, viewers doesn't represent players. A lot of people watch people play while they're playing the same game. So you're right, you can't use that as a metric, but you could just check Steam, and Steam showed like it was top 10 for peak players. There was like it was literally in the hundreds of thousands that players were trying to play when last Epoch released, and that is where they fail in the marketing. Almost because when you market something as a company, it is a promise, right? That's where they fell short. I feel bad for the players that wanted to play and trade and do the whole economy thing because I know that's really big in action RPGs. Me personally, I'm a hardcore player and solo found, meaning I just like getting my gear myself. So for me, it was perfect. Like I could just go offline and then play Circle of Fortune, and I'm good. And that's another thing I want to talk about, but I just want to finish my thoughts on this this blunder they had with the Merchant Guild. I feel like those players have every right to complain. I feel like if they downvoted last Epoch for that particular reason, that's justified. But I hope they will give last Epoch another chance and come back for a new cycle. Because by then, I would hope they would have it fixed and the servers be good, and you're able to actually play the economy game that you wanted. I feel like that marketing aspect was just not well handled. Maybe I just don't know because you're trying to get players hype and all this stuff. So it's not like you could say, I don't know. I feel like maybe they could have said it. Maybe they could have said, "Hey, our servers aren't going to be able to deal with all these new players because whatever budget, experience, or the combination of both." Anyhow, I don't want to keep beating a dead horse, but I do feel bad for those players. I think those players are warranted for saying what they're saying and just saying, hey, I just downvoted it a little bit because of this. But to say Last Epoch sucks, that's not fair. The gameplay is fun, there's many builds, and the campaign, when you first go through it, is probably pretty cool. So there's a lot of great aspects. So anyhow, now let's go over the end game. I want to talk about the end game a bit. Monoliths are dope for the beginning. Once you do it several times, so let's just say 5-6 hours, they start becoming less fun because there's nothing to engage you right after you kill all the bosses for the blessings, and then also to do Empower Monolith. Like, it starts just to fall off unless you give yourself goals. Unless you're the type of person that loves grinding, unless you're the type of person that likes to min-max your build. There's nothing in the monoliths that keeps you engaged while you're farming. Right? The only thing you have is the exile mages. That's it. But besides that, everything else about monoliths is kind of whack. The part that I enjoyed the most was getting the resources. So for a fresh start and being solo self-found, it is extremely fun to a certain point because I even hit a wall. I got to a point where I got my build working. I got a lot of my gear. Now all I need to do was min-max it. At that point, even with the Circle of Fortune faction, it felt like forever trying to get upgrades, and that felt bad. Didn't feel good. And like to push corruption, it's like you get 20 here, 30 there, and it's very small. It's very little increments. And maybe that wouldn't be such a problem if they would have monoliths have things that are more engaging. So for me, I felt like it would have been nice if they had, more events happening within the monolith. Maybe mini bosses, maybe mini objectives. Like the way monoliths are now is you don't even explore the whole monolith. So you're not even going through the whole map. You're literally going straight to the objective and then getting out and then repeating the same thing. And that just feels at a certain point, this feels, it sucks. At a certain point, you're just like, okay, whatever. So I'm doing objectives that are just boring. They're not really engaging. They're not tough. It's just not fun. And once you beat the bosses, even the bosses at a certain point are like, okay, this boss is kind of whack. It's kind of boring. You know, I do this, I do that, and then I just steamroll them. Every players are different. For me, I really enjoy games that give me challenges. So I hope when they make new bosses, they make bosses that even if you get stronger, the fight's still hard or at least challenging. The one thing I would give is the Void boss. I don't know his name, but when you're trying to add corruption, because that boss has like 22 different movesets. So like every time you fight him, you're fighting something a little bit different. Even if you steamroll him, at least he does different things. There's different variations that guy does that you're like, oh, okay, cool. And that's what I feel like the monoliths need. Like they need something to keep it fresh. The whole do this objective and then get out. I just feel like that's just not the best system. And maybe they just didn't have time to fully flesh out the system they wanted. And maybe we're gonna see a way better and more in depth end game later as they continue to do cycles. And I hope so. But for the most part, end game is fun if you give yourself goals. I think you give yourself goals, and I think you're the type of person that loves to grind. You're gonna enjoy Monolith. Monolith in itself is a great system, but it can be better. Now, I feel like so that was the biggest flaw to me is the end game that it's not more in depth, and also that the marketing for econ trading it didn't help up to the promise of the marketing. And you might be like, well, you're Circle of Fortune, so why do you care? Because I want all players to enjoy the game, right? Like I'm a big fighting game fan, so I enjoy Street Fighter, but I also enjoy Mortal Kombat. I also enjoy Tekken. And there's some people that are like, well, I just like Tekken. That's cool, but you should want everyone in your genre to just enjoy the game, newcomer or veteran. So the people that like to trade, I do want them to have a good experience because then, they bring in, more people, and more people just brings in more fun because you're gonna have different builds, you're gonna have people that figure out different things, and it's just cool to see other people do things that I'm not doing, right? It's like if you see someone that sings, and I know this is like way off topic, but just to give an example, like maybe you can't sing, so you enjoy seeing someone that could do it at a high level. So for me, it's cool to see people that figure out the economy and be like the best person that knows how to hunt for items, so they know, oh, at this monolith, this item works for this build, and they do it efficiently, and all this other stuff were things that I won't do or care to do. I think it's cool to see that. But in the end, those are my thoughts, and I feel like Last Epoch has a bright future. I think it's going to be number 2 action RPG game out there. I know they probably want to be number 1, but once PoE 2 comes out, I feel like that's going to be the dominant action RPGs just because of the development they're going for. And that could be a topic for another video for another day when we get closer to the beta release of PoE 2. But if you enjoyed my review, I would appreciate a like and consider subscribing, and catch you in the next one.